Hey guys, Mr. V here. So I'm going to make a video that addresses some of these questions posted below. How and why were the English colonies developed in the South? What were the important institutions that were created to support the development and sustainability of these colonies? The first English colony was not established until approximately 100 years after the Spanish and Portuguese claimed most of Central and South America. England was delayed by continuous religious and political turmoil, prompting early voyages to be privately financed by a group of investors who formed joint stock companies. The Virginia Joint Stock Company was one such group that financed the permanent settlement of Jamestown in 1607. Young, enterprising men looking for gold settled along the swampy marshes of the Chesapeake Bay and almost faced extinction like their predecessors in Roanoke in 1585. While John Smith's militant leadership and the support of neighboring Powhatan tribes are notable factors in Jamestown's survival, it was really the introduction of a resilient strain of tobacco by John Rolfe that led to its success. This valuable crop, along with issuing head rights or land grants, attracted more Englishmen to the region, slowly evolving this small settlement into the broader royal colony that will be later known as Virginia. Under this head right system, wealthy entrepreneurs were able to afford large tracts of valuable property closer for quick access to markets abroad. Owning property also qualified eligible white men to vote and even hold office in the colonial legislature known as the House of Burgesses. These policies ensured that the colonial elite maintained economic and political power during this time. Despite owning land, labor was needed to maintain lucrative production of tobacco. The English were incapable of enslaving Native Americans by force, like the conquistadors under the encomienda system, so they began obtaining cheap labor in the form of indentured servitude from England's poorest. Men and women who wanted to escape poverty in Europe signed contracts to wealthy investors who would sponsor their trip to North America in exchange for their 5 to 7 year service. Some of these indentured servants, through hard work and patience, eventually managed to buy their own property and be small independent farmers after their contract was up. But most really had no choice but to re-enter into another one just to survive. This practice eventually formed a social hierarchy based on land ownership, creating a feudal-like system in the southern colonies. At the top were wealthy large plantation owners, followed by small farmers, as well as independent artisans or craftsmen. Underneath them were indentured servants, and finally, slaves were at the bottom of this hierarchy. The first set of slaves reached the shores of Virginia in 1619. Despite this early introduction, slaves were sold at a very high price, prompting most of the Virginian elite to utilize indentured servitude throughout the first half of the century. Interestingly enough, there was also no robust set of slave codes at this time either. The laws concerning slavery was very fluid. Some slaves could earn or buy their freedom, could marry, and freed slaves could even own property in particular cases. It wouldn't be until 1661 where representatives in the House of Burgesses institutionalized slavery under the specific parameters of race. Yet solidarity between poor blacks and whites continued, posing a significant political and social threat to Virginia's ruling elite. The biggest reflection of this bond came in the form of a revolution known as Bacon's Rebellion. What initially started as a conflict with local natives evolved into a broader fight against Virginia's elite. Frustrated by their economic status, a coalition of white and black people, under the leadership of Nathaniel Bacon, burned Jamestown to the ground, but their victory was short-lived. Though the rebellion failed, it signaled to the elite that more was needed to be done to separate the bonds between those low on the social ladder. The legislature made it easier for poor whites to acquire property, and the practice of indentured servitude was replaced with slavery. Stricter laws, too, was passed in order to control a large slave population by the 18th century. Codes regulated every aspect of life, included making slavery a permanent condition, criminalizing any fraternization with white people, especially women, and allowing greater punishment for resistance. Over time, these policies reinforced the ideas of racial superiority. This ideology supported the cash crop economy in the South for the benefit of those in power. This system remained largely in place throughout much of the South up until the 1860s.